Hey everybody, it's Fruit Bats. So on the stream I like to talk about some of the strategic decisions that I'm making and my thought process as I'm making them, but I thought it might be interesting to take a game and look at it in depth after the run is over. I'll talk about all the thoughts that were going through my head, all of the strategy that's going into my decisions, and hopefully it'll help you to become a better arena player just seeing some of the insights that I go through. This will be the first episode in an ongoing series of videos where we do this, so let's get started. Our first game here, we are 5-1 in a Druid v Druid mirror match. You can see our deck list over on the left side there. Our goal with this deck is simply to play a very tempo-oriented game. We're going to put down our minions on the board, curve them out as nicely as possible, and ideally finish it off with either a Savage Roar or some of our big endgame fatties. And if we run out of steam, we've got that Nourish to catch us back up as well. On the mulligan here, I see a 2-drop, a 3-drop, and a 4-drop, and that is good news for me as the first player. If I'm going second, I have a tendency to mulligan a little bit more aggressively, because you've got that extra card to work with, you've got that coin to help smooth out your curve, but as the first player, the advantage that we have is initiative, and I want to keep that going with a good play on 2, a good play on 3, and a good play on 4, regardless of what I draw over the next few turns. So I like this. Note that I'm not just looking for cards that cost 2, 3, and 4, I'm looking for cards that I can actually play on turns 2, 3, and 4. So if our 4-drop were instead, say, a swipe, I would probably throw that back. But these I can play on their respective turns, so it's perfect for me as player 1. We'll keep it all. Turn 1, predictably we have nothing to do, so we'll just pass this one. And our opponent opens with Living Roots to put 2 1/1s on the board. This is rough for us because they have now just taken away our primary advantage as first player, that being, again, initiative, because our opponent has already developed 4 stat points on the board before we've even had our first card hit. Turn 2, we draw our Acolyte of Pain. Now, this is a great answer to our opponent's 2 1/1s, but we're going to have to wait a turn for it, so let's look for another play. We can either use our hero ability to clear one of the 1/1s, or we can develop a card. I think hero ability here is pretty tempting for new players because it's such a value-oriented play. We get to kill one of our opponent's minions, and we don't even have to spend a card to do it. But in this situation, it's just going to be too slow. We would spend our entire turn simply to deny our opponent 1 damage next turn, and that's not quite enough. So instead, let's go ahead and develop the Robo-Cub. We'll put it in tank mode with the idea that this is going to force our opponent to trade with both of his 1/1s and then use the hero ability in order to clear it. This will leave the board clear and give us initiative back going into turn 3. So that's our goal. Let's see if it works. Unfortunately, our opponent has a Wrath, so we'll take 2 damage to face and have our board cleared. Coming into turn 3 again with the board state the same, it looks like we'll just play that Acolyte of Pain that we drew last turn. We could play the Scarlet Crusader, but it would die to both of the 1/1s or one of the 1/1s in the hero ability, and that's just not enough value for me. Earthen Ring is great stats, and if it were the only 3-drop that I could play, I would be fine with it. I would heal 2 to my face, and I'd have a minion on the board that challenges my opponent's control. But right now, a 1/3 is sufficient to clear the board, and I could get some value in card draw, and we could save the Earthen Ring for later. So we'll do this. Opponent coining out a 4-drop here, which makes me think that he probably doesn't have any 3s, and on top of that, it's a 4 with mediocre stats, so I also have to assume that he has really no other 4-drops, or perhaps he's setting up for a spell. Swipe will be available to him next turn, but setting up for Swipe right now is not really that good of a setup, so I'm not putting him on Swipe. For our turn 4, we draw a second Scarlet Crusader. Neither of them are good because those 1/1s are on the board. Let's go ahead and draw a card first and see if we get anything. It's not helpful. Silence could be way too important to burn here. I want to keep Silence against a Druid for their buffs and for their big taunts that I might not otherwise be able to get through, so we'll just play our biggest on-curve stat drop in the Dragonkin here. Dragonkin also has a bit of a soft taunt because the opponent is going to fear that we can buff it, so he's probably going to make this trade with the 4/4 plus the hero ability or the 1/1 into this 3/5, putting his 4/4 down to a 4/1, allowing me to kill it next turn, and drop the Scarlet Crusader. So that sounds like a good setup for turn 5. Oh, and it looks like our opponent top-decked that swipe that I didn't put him on. He might have another one lurking in his deck, and he was just trying to throw me off there, but that's a bummer. We lose our entire board. So even though we're behind here, the play that we were setting up for still works. We'll drop the Scarlet Crusader, and we'll kill the 1/1 with the hero ability. There's really no other good on-curve play here, and even though we've got some 4-mana minions, none of them really work. They're all just answered too well by the board, so we'll go with this play. And a very aggressive second Living Roots does a number to my board and makes me take a lot of damage. Unfortunately, this doesn't really give any information to me. Normally, I would see a fully aggressive play like this as the idea that my opponent has a really aggro deck or has the cards in hand that means he's ready to kill me, but in this situation, it was just a really efficient way to remove my Scarlet. Summoning the Saplings wouldn't have been good because then the Pyromancer would have killed it. Using the spell on the Scarlet Crusader wouldn't have done anything to it. So this is just a good way for him to deal some extra damage to face and really pressure my health. Coming into turn 6, it is 28 health to 12, so we are in trouble. We need to stabilize and get this board back. The Wrath draw here is perfect. Without it, my play probably would have been Scarlet Crusader and Earthen Ring. Using the hero ability on the Pyromancer would be a bit slow since I don't have a good 4-drop to play that would effectively challenge the Ogre Magi, but a 3/3 and a 3/1 with Divine Shield would answer the board, although I would be risking that my opponent can't come up with enough damage to just straight up kill me. But Wrath here is perfect to create the clear. If I were to hero ability, it would mean my turn is over since I have no other 2-drops, but Stormwind Knight will help me get the kill and still develop some stats on the board. Also, I've got a target for Dark Iron Dwarf next turn, so whatever he plays, hopefully I can kill. Oh man, a Stranglethorn Tiger is scary, since I have no way to kill it while it's stealthed. Unless I pick up a taunt, I might just have to take this 5 damage to face. I don't want to play the Dark Iron Dwarf or Spellbreaker yet, because either one of them might be crucial later, so instead we'll just go with that play that I talked about from last turn, the Earthen Ring Farseer and the Scarlet Crusader. We'll heal ourselves here, because the extra 3 health on the Stormwind Knight will probably not make a difference, and we want to make sure that our health is high enough to survive any sort of burst our opponent might have. Starfire is a risk. I still think it's possible that our opponent might have another swipe, and we've also got to remember that Druid combo deals 14 health as well, so staying above that might be helpful. It's not really worth playing around in Arena, but it's not a bad thing to think about. Knife Juggler in Descension with that knife hitting my Scarlet Crusader and costing me its shield is a rough play here. He spends some time trying to figure out whether to go face or trade. I really think he needs to be playing aggressively here. If he goes face, I'm going to be in the situation that I've got to make this trade that he's considering anyway, so he really should go aggressive. Thankfully, he decides to make the trade, which saves me 5 damage on my hero. At the end of the day, I think this was a mistake. And we draw Swipe, which is great because I'm probably going to be playing the Starfall here. We get a little bit of extra reach, and we get an opportunity for another clear. But Starfall here is amazing, and we'll also put a 2-drop on the board just to get more stats down. Uh-oh, Kvaldir Raider on the board. It's scary, and if I don't answer it immediately, it's probably going to wind up killing me, so I need to deal with it now. We have several options here. We can either deal with it as a 6/6 and use Swipe and Stormwind Knight, or we can use Dark Iron Dwarf and trade both, or we could use the Spellbreaker to silence it down to a 4/4, kill it with a Swipe, kill it with a Dark Iron Dwarf on the Stormwind Knight, or kill it by trading both. We've got a lot of options, but the decision is all about what resources I feel like I need to preserve. In hindsight, I think the best play here is actually to use Silence and the Dark Iron Dwarf. We would end the turn with a 4/4, a 4/3, and a 2/3, with our opponent's board being clear. However, in the moment, I thought it was important to save the Spellbreaker on the thought that since I lack hard removal, I want a way through one of Druid's classic big taunts, the Volcanic Lumber, the Iron Bark, the Ancient of War. There's also a possibility for Mark of Nature or Mark of the Wild, so being able to silence one of those off could be really important too. If any of those cards had come out for the rest of the game, I would call my decision a very intuitive play, which thoughtfully preserved our counters. Ultimately, though, I think using the Spellbreaker here was better. This play ended up ultimately not mattering in the end, but I think a more aggressive stat-developing play would have been stronger. I also developed Druid of the Flame in Firecat form because I need to start putting on the damage, and if my opponent plays a large minion, I want to be able to kill it. Ooh, a charging Druid of the Fang will give our opponent the answer to the Druid of the Flame. This might be good news. That charge could have gone to my face, or it could have been a very annoying and scary stealthed 3-2, so this isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's still a big loss for us. Alright, with Savage Roar in hand, I need to get as many minions on the board as possible to secure our win condition, so we have to play Spellbreaker here, we can't hold it back anymore. Our opponent also has 0 cards, so we know he's not preserving anything big or dangerous. If we decide to swipe the 3-2, we take no damage to our face and deal 2 damage to the face with the tail end of swipe and our hero ability. But if we swipe our opponent's face, we take 2 extra damage, and our opponent takes 4. We need to drive his health down quickly, and we're already in danger if our opponent top decks something sufficiently large, so we may as well go for it. And Knife Juggler is not large, so this is a good situation for us. This Juggler must be answered if we want to live. If we were to decide to attack with the 4-4 and develop the Bone Guard, we'd end up with a 4-1, a 4-3, and a 3-3 on the board with the opponent at 13 health. If we assume that he armors up to 14, Savage Roar will give us the kill next turn. But if you were to top deck Swipe, Spellbreaker and Dark Iron Dwarf would both die, leaving me in a situation where I would be unable to kill him. So alternatively, we could Savage Roar now, use our face to clear the Juggler, and we end up with a 4-4, a 4-3, and a 3-3 with the opponent at 6. It's essentially the same play, except we're telegraphing what we're doing a little bit more, which is fine since our opponent is top decking, but we're protecting ourselves from swipe and any other ping, so I think this is a more likely path to victory. And that Starfall top deck is not enough to beat me, so we win here on the concession. GG, well played. Hey, is there anything you would have done differently in this game? Let me know any strategic decisions that you think may have been better or worse, or some thoughts you had on the game. I'd love to hear it. But with that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next strategy video.